All right, everybody. Thanks for coming in. Let's get this show on the road here in a second. All right, let's nuke that echo. All right. Well, it's been a little minute since I've been here with you guys. I missed the weekend games for some other things. I did watch them after the fact, so I have some thoughts about how those losses happen. Three losses in a row for the Jazz, coming back to earth a little bit after a wonderful 10-3 start. 10-6 now, which is still a very respectable record, playoff kind of looking record. And the Jazz have lost these three games in three very different ways. They've also kind of lost them in very similar ways as well, and we'll get into that, exactly what I mean by that in a moment. And just kind of the general sense of the team right now is they haven't been uncompetitive in any of these games, and there's been some weird things happening in each of these games, but there hasn't been a dominating performance by the Jazz either to really match up against some of the talent that has been faced over the past 2 days, I will say, in some instances. But the Jazz aren't getting blown out either. So I think this has been a positive couple of three games if you're looking at this from a team development standpoint and you're looking at, all right, what players are worth sticking around, who are we trying to evaluate for talent and that sort of thing. But wins are always nice, and I always appreciate that. Yeah, losing a few games in a row is never a fun feeling, but we can get into some of the overall games over the past little while. And let's see here. I was wondering what sound I had. I still have the interviews from League Pass are now just starting, and I'm hearing Will Hardy's voice in the back, and I'm like, who is talking to me in the background here a little bit. So we'll probably get into the Philly and Washington games a little bit later, but we should talk about tonight because that is what we're here for right now. And it's really a points in the paint battle for the Jazz at this point. And I was quite disappointed today that the Knicks were consistently trotting out very defensively poor lineups that the Jazz couldn't match toe-to-toe with, because there was just no resistance in the paint from the Jazz on the other end. It's our old nemesis, Jalen Brunson, is able to just kind of waltz in the paint wherever he wanted. I'm going to quickly jump into the end and mention that good things started to happen for the Jazz defensively when they were aggressively switching on Brunson and just letting anyone just keep him out on the perimeter and let him size up Kelly Olynyk, let him size up Malik Beasley, instead of just backing down Mike Conley. And Conley was able to draw a charge once, but he also let up a couple layups, he committed a couple fouls. Once Jalen Brunson was turned into an outside player, better things started to happen. And generally throughout this game, though, it was a points in the paint kind of a disappointment for Utah. And it isn't just a Rudy Gobert thing and just not having a big behemoth rim protector. It still is also a whole team-wide thing. The Utah's issue of not having good players on the backcourt line to prevent that penetration a lot. So Knicks scored over half their points in the paint, right? This was not a good or bad three-point shooting night. The Knicks are an okay three-point shooting team. They went 34% from three. By the way, the Jazz are getting pretty lucky on the three-point shooting defense perspective, which is a fairly fluky statistic that can go up and down from game to game. So you can't just rely on teams shooting 32% all the time. And it's going to be, how can you manage the interior? And is that going to be relying on Kelly Olynyk and Lauri Markkanen to be play a little above their strength level, above their height level? I know Holly Rowe likes to tout that they're 7 feet tall, but they're not, right? They're 6'10", 6'11", and throughout their entire careers, they've been kind of okay to average as rim protectors. We saw a tweet today from Dan Clayton that showed that Lauri Markkanen is actually leading the league in defensive field goal percentage allowed at the rim for those facing a minimum number of attempts. I think it was 80 attempts. And that's just not going to hold, right? He's holding opponents to under 52%, and he had a pretty nice day today. But a couple, like his two blocks, you look at those and say, okay, those are good rim protecting blocks. One of them was a block on Julius Randle, where Randle dropped the ball as he was kind of dribbling into Markkanen's chest, gathered it quickly, and threw up an awkward shot that all Markkanen had to do was basically just stand there and swat the ball away. The other one was a fabulous defensive play by Markkanen, but it wasn't a rim protecting play. It was actually just an enormously wonderful defensive possession that ended up forcing the ball around the horn by the Knicks, but in a very frantic way, and it ended up with Cam Reddish having to take a rush three-pointer in the corner, and Markkanen knew the shot was coming and flew in from the left side of Reddish from the wing and blocked it out of bounds, forced shot clock violation. These were not rim-protecting plays. And you can't really rely on Markkanen to be that sort of rim protecting guy forever, even though it's been a nice start statistically to the season. He's been a poor rim protector throughout his career, but I do think that he has improved. He never fouls. He's always good at staying vertical. Kelly Olynyk fouls all the time because he jumps all the time. Lowry does not jump to pump fakes. He's stout and he knows what he's doing. But when you combine, you can deal with Lowry Markkanen as like a 4-5 rim protector, especially in clutch moments against certain offenses when you're not playing Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic. But you can't do it when you have Clarkson and Conley as your backcourt, or Sexton, or Beasley. And all four of those guys have one or two things that are kind of good defensively, right? Like, Conley used to be a great defender, and he still got smarts about him. He just can't keep up with guys anymore, and he doesn't have the physicality, and he dies on screens. Clarkson's got athletic verve to him, and when Clarkson has a jolt of energy and decides that, and Clarkson has a good feel when he sees that other people are tunnel visioning, so he's good at kind of saying, I can get a steal out of here because he's not going to pass my guy's ball. Often because Clarkson's guarding not very good offensive player. Beasley gives a shit. He tries, but and Beasley, for his credit, doesn't really die on screens, but he gets shaken out of his boots quite a bit. He got shaken out of his boots pretty much all weekend by all sorts of different offensive players, from whether it be Tyrese Maxey in Philly to Brunson today, and Colin Sexton. We all kind of know his limitations defensively. A lot of energy, a lot of good rebounding, a lot of fire, but he's going to get caught out of position. He's going to get caught ball watching sometimes. Those guys as your defensive backcourt is just going to keep guys getting to the rim and is going to allow opponents to get to the rim, as they've done time and time again. And you don't need to be a particularly skilled ball handler to get by these guys. And if you're not facing a Jalen Brunson type who is equally good scoring and passing, if you're facing, I don't know, a Trey Jones in San Antonio, who isn't a particularly adept outside shooter, if you're allowing him to just kind of get in the paint a little bit and execute good dump-off passes to Jakob Poeltl or something like that, like, they're just going to feast on it because we just don't have the front court to match up with it. I mentioned this on a few different postcasts. Kelly Olynyk's foul troubles are unusual for him throughout his career, but I cannot sit here and claim that all these fouls that are getting called on him are just not fouls, or that they are somehow he's getting a bad whistle. I think it's not a good whistle, and it's probably below average, and there's some shit that really shouldn't be called. And as a fan of the Jazz, of course, I'm going to be annoyed at some of these calls on Kelly Olynyk. But even the call that was challenged at the end that was overturned, I was stunned that they overturned it, because Olynyk does foul Hartenstein on the offensive rebound attempt. But I think the refs correctly viewed that, like, the whistle came because of the armbar that Hartenstein then leveled on Olynyk. But Olynyk's constantly jumping. He's running into guys. He complained so loud today about a foul where he jumped in the air, he got faked out, and he kept his arms straight up, but his body is moving sideways. And I think it was RJ Barrett who had the ball right in the teeth of the paint, right underneath the rim, and he just lets Olynyk fly by him and waits till Olynyk lands and has his arms not quite where they should be, and just, raises the ball into his arms. That's a foul. And I appreciate what Olynyk does kind of throughout the court. He's a good table setter for a lot of different things offensively. He's as good as you can expect defensively at this point in his career as a not super fast, not super tall, not super strong 6'10" guy. But the dude is fouling more, and I think they are legitimate fouls. I'm not sure how this changes. I don't think he's getting a particularly rough whistle, because it's not like he's a young player learning the game, right? Like he is who he is. I think he's in a different role than he typically is in. If you think about his stops in Boston and Miami, he's playing a lot with another center type player, who can take a lot of the key rim protection elements out. He is the center rim protector here. He is the one guarding Joel Embiid on Sunday. And conceptually, Jared Vanderbilt is more of the burly defense first rebounding type, but like that guy's not a center. He's not a rim protector. He's never been a rim protector in his career. So Kelly Olynyk's being put in a little bit different position as being the constantly challenged line of defense there. And I think he is struggling in that department. So we're just giving up tons of points in the paint from guards, from front court players. We saw what happened with Embiid's 57 points. Watching the Philly game back, just to rewind a little bit, Embiid shot a ton of mid-rangers that went in, but there's no pressure on them. He was in the practice gym shooting those mid-rangers, and so it's easy. It was easy for him. There was nothing we could do. The double teams were a mess, and had a few double teams today against Jalen Brunson. Had a couple double teams today against Julius Randle. And unlike the first couple weeks of the year, the players who were not double teaming were so slow to react to when the passes were made out of the double team. There wasn't that frantic, high energy, like, we're going to leave somebody wide open, and we're going to challenge the offense to find that guy. And a good offense is going to find that guy, and it's not a sustainable level of defense. But if you're going to roll out double teams, your defense has to be prepared to just fucking move and fly around. And that just was not happening on Sunday versus Embiid, and it was not happening today, based on what I saw today. So, take a quick pause to say, this is Salt City Hoops live postcast. I'm having a beer. I might be upset, but hey, this is a fun Jazz team. Hey, we had fun there at the end, didn't we? That defensive possession, I need to watch it back to figure out exactly what happened there, but what ended up with that Markkanen block over in the corner, that was that flying around defense that really mattered. So, the two main reasons for the loss here today are going to be that points to the paint, as I mentioned, and Utah's backcourt just really struggled offensively. And you're going to end up with Clarkson 5 of 16, 3 of 11 from 3. Clarkson was this is probably the first game all year I've been disappointed in Jordan Clarkson. 5 turnovers today for Clarkson. The Knicks, their Coach Thibodeau previewed a lineup change for them, and he wouldn't tell them what it was going to be, right? Which is just so annoying and stupid, but that's what Thibodeau does. And it ends up being that Evan Fournier was a DNP coach's decision, and all those minutes basically went to Cam Reddish, maybe a couple minutes here and there to Barrett or quickly, but Fournier did not play, and Reddish was the beneficiary of that. Reddish has had one good year in Atlanta, as it was either his rookie year or his second year, as like a really like interesting, frisky, big help defender. And for a hot minute, it looked like he was the better defensive prospect than his rookie mate, DeAndre Hunter, who was his entire calling card, or his primary card coming out of college. Hunter was defensively. But ever since he got to New York, he's been absolutely a nightmare defensively. Just cannot keep up with anybody. Isn't executing what Tibbs wants to do. It's probably why he's been so reticent to play Reddish, even though that New York traded something to get him. But Reddish played today, and he was awful defensively. He just couldn't keep up with anybody. And he was often tasked with marking Jordan Clarkson. And Clarkson would just run off of simple screens all along the perimeter, and Reddish would be 5-6 feet behind him. Or Utah would execute something where even Reddish would have to just like force a switch, and you end up with Hartenstein having to like catch up to Clarkson after Clarkson gets the ball in the perimeter. Clarkson is open for these threes. These are the shots he takes and makes all the time, and I don't know if he got spooked or just felt like he was too open, but he would hold the ball and pump fake, let the guy kind of go by, but because his defender was so often so far behind the play that a Clarkson pump fake, the defender would kind of go to contest, and then he could recover quickly, and all of a sudden he's back in front of Clarkson, right? It's not like there's a real hard closeout, he's right in my tail, if I get a pump fake, he's going to fly right by me. No, he had all the time in the world and still pump faked, aborted the offense. It was like old Jordan Clarkson, and it was really gross to watch. Really, really, really gross to watch. I thought he could have been a lot more assertive shooting the ball from the catch, right? I don't think he finishes 5 of 16 from the field if he's a little bit more assertive when he says, yeah, I'm fucking open. I'm going to take these shots. This is what I'm here to do. And I thought that was quite disappointing today. Conley was a good table setter today, and I thought he had some nice plays defensively. And, you end up with, 1 turnover for him. That's great, to 7 assists. But a few of his fouls were silly. He ends up with 5 fouls. I think one of them was a garbage time foul, but he had a couple bad fouls on Brunson, and he finishes 3 of 10, 1 of 6, and just you didn't feel that table setting from him except for a couple great passes, including an alley-oop to Walker Kessler today. But you just weren't feeling it from Conley and Clarkson, and Sexton was pretty much you had a bad Sexton game where you saw the flashes of just always driving it down New York's throat and doing a great job at forcing pressure and putting pressure on the rim in the fast break or the semi-transition. And he had one great layup out of it, but there were a lot of times when he would force the issue and get way downhill. And the smart point guard thing to do is, and you see Conley do this all the time, especially in the last couple of years, because Conley just does not shoot layups on the fast break anymore to save his life. Just curl back and get up to a position where you analyze who's coming down the floor and who has an advantage, who is beating their man down the floor, get in the ball and get a different layup. Instead, he runs in. If he doesn't get to the rim on the fast break, he kind of dribbles the ball in an aimless direction. He'll dribble the ball to the corner, or he will literally he'll get to the rim and just back up and just wait for everyone to get back, including the defense, to figure out what to do next. And because there isn't a set play in those instances, and Sexton's the one with the ball, he ends up shooting a tough shot or doesn't run the right play and ends up kind of a mess. So Malik Beasley I thought was fine offensively. He does, as long as Malik Beasley's shooting threes confidently, I really don't care. He was 3 of 8 today from 3. Really appreciated that. His defense was just kind of rough today against a backcourt of New York that, besides Brunson, you just kind of hope to be a little bit better. I loathe RJ Barrett, and he struggled today, and I'm going to give a little bit of credit for that to Markkanen's perimeter defense. I thought Markkanen did a pretty good job on him for a lot of the game. Jared Vanderbilt had a nice defensive game against RJ Barrett, but Vanderbilt was just not affecting the game offensively at all. And we had to go with some different options. And that's how Walker Kessler ends up playing 18 minutes over his usual 12 to 15. Gets a few extra minutes in lieu of Vanderbilt, in part because he was probably the only semblance of rim protection on the team. But he commits a couple fouls. He does give up a couple baskets at the rim, but he was putting pressure on the rim offensively and added very Kessler-like 4-4 from the field, including a couple alley-oop dunk passes from Conley and Talen Horton-Tucker. And it was fine. And I just, between Vanderbilt and Kessler, they're fine. I think they probably, on any given night, Vanderbilt and Kessler will maybe take more off the table than they put on. But they're close to that midline, right? You want those guys to just be, if those guys can be net positive players, and I don't just mean plus minus, I mean just how have they affected the game, how have they performed individually. If those guys can just be a tick above the issues that they bring, which is their lack of shooting or sometimes a silly turnover, then I think the Jazz are in good position to win those minutes, and because of their, if they can provide a little extra, that can really help mask some of the other issues, like if Clarkson's having a poor shooting night or whatever. But you don't lose the game because of Vanderbilt and Kessler. You might win a game because of those guys, but you probably aren't going to lose them, despite Vanderbilt for 2 out of the past 3 games scoring on his own basket accidentally. So that was kind of a mess. The one guy we should talk about, especially today, Simone Fontecchio. I have so thoroughly enjoyed whenever this guy's been on the floor this year. From the early season when we had a couple injuries or COVID absences and he got on the floor, you're watching a guy who's played professional basketball really figure things out at the NBA level, but he's bringing that flavor of, here, I know where to be, and I know that I need to move fast, I need to get there quickly. The number one thing that jumps out in the page to me when I'm watching Simone Fontecchio run around the court is exactly that, running around the court. His ability to relocate and figuring out where to cut, when to cut, and if things are in semi-transition or the fast break, he knows that if I get to my spot as fast as fucking possible, this will be very difficult for the offense to contend with. And a lot of times, Cam Reddish completely lost him, had no idea where he was, and he never got the ball. And I'm looking at, you look at Fontecchio's team worst minus 19 today. And aside from a couple missed shots, and there was one bad pass turnover that came after a brilliant cut by Fontecchio, who gets the ball and then makes a bad pass. I don't think that minus 19 was his fault. He very rarely was the man that he was guarding scored a point, and he was never very rarely the reason that the team couldn't score. There were a couple offensive rebounds that other players got that ended up in Obi Toppin's hand, and he was usually marking Toppin on the defensive end, and Toppin had a couple threes against Fontecchio, but a couple of them were good contests, and a couple of them were off of offensive rebounds that are just, sometimes it's hard to defend those. Offensive rebounds can be killer that way. His relocation ability is just super, super fun to watch. There was a fast break. This is the quintessential Fontecchio possession. I really encourage you all to watch it. It was one of his 3 threes today, so it should be easy to find if you're taking a look at the play-by-play. I believe second quarter, I think it was, really made me so happy. So it's a fast break. We're going right to left as we're watching the broadcast. And Fontecchio streaks across the top of the screen and gets the ball in the corner. And there's a pretty decent average closeout from New York. I think Fontecchio could have shot it, but he didn't, whatever. And he passes it out to the wing, Taylor Horton-Tucker, who is wide open. It's a great pass. Fontecchio wanted to shoot it, fine. But he makes just a laser of a pass to Taylor Horton-Tucker in the wing, who is wide open. That's a shot. Say what you want about Horton-Tucker's shooting ability, whatever. That's a shot. He's encouraged to shoot it. Let's hope it goes in. Well, as the ball's in the air, Fontecchio, because New York is tired or they're not boxing up properly, he is in prime position for the rebound. He swim moves under Reddish and gets in front of Hartenstein or Jericho Sims, whoever the center was, and he was ready to rebound. Of course, it's one of those 3-point attempts that just drills the back iron, right? So it flies out. And so it was either Walker Kessler or one of the backcourt guys gets the ball. And Fontecchio, he relocates to not quite the corner, but a little bit 6 feet away from the corner. He gets over to his spot right away, and he is wide open, and the ball finds him. And Cam Reddish, or maybe it was Jericho Sims at this point, they're aware of Fontecchio's presence there in the corner, and they start closing out on him hard. And this is when he says, I know how I'm going to make a play. And you see a lot of this from European basketball, especially from guys in the corner, these shooters that really know how to play. So what he just does a give and go, but for in the 3-point area, right? Usually when you think of give and go, it's you pump fake from the perimeter, you give the ball to an interior guy and you're streaking towards the basket for a layup or trying to draw a foul. You don't often see give and goes where the initial ball handler stays on the perimeter. And that's exactly what he does. He does a little pitch and catch with Walker Kessler in the paint. And allows the defender to fly by him, passes the ball to Kessler, relocates, catches the ball, and just drills a three. And all I kept thinking about watching that possession is pressure, 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 pressure. He was putting so much gravity with his relocation and his speed that it was just like, it was fun. He fits this fun, fast style of the Jazz so much better than Rudy fucking Gay. Right? Fontecchio is playing 17 minutes today because Gay was out with a hand sprain. There is a place for optimal Rudy Gay or even just average Rudy Gay on a team like this. You're playing with bench units. You're playing with young and fast Colin Sexton. You're playing with Walker Kessler, who might need to be pointed where to be sometimes. You're playing with Talen Horton-Tucker, who might be a little bit exuberant at times. There's a place for a Joe Johnson type, a Rudy Gay in this type of offense. But you need to have a little bit more give-a-shit level that is just not there with Rudy Gay. And his lack of speed is being doubled down by a lack of give-a-shit level from Rudy Gay. And it's just making his minutes completely useless. And so what a whiplash to see Fontecchio running around the court. And his minus 19 on the night is not because he shot it poorly. He shot it 3 of 5 from 3. He rebounded it great. He had a couple great passes. Just one bad turnover, but like I said, it came after a really nifty cut, so I was impressed at what happened there. And then he also blocks a layup from Jalen Brunson. It was one of those, like, he's guarding the corner shooter, who I think is at that point was Obi Toppin, and he's got 2 feet outside of the paint. And from the strong side comes Jalen Brunson, completely shakes his man. He's got a wide open layup, and maybe Brunson took his time a little bit, but all of a sudden Fontecchio is 2 steps over and he's blocking the shot. And he pins it against the backboard, gets the rebound, moves it down the court. Whoo, that was cool. That might have been the position that led to the elaborate position I just described. I don't think maybe that was the position, but it was just like Rudy Gay ain't doing that shit. Absolutely not. You're not getting that defense out of Fontecchio. And yeah, maybe Fontecchio is 20 pounds lighter. Maybe he needs to learn NBA defense a little bit better before you can rely on him out there. But if he's going to put that kind of pressure offensively, and we saw what happened in his first minutes in the NBA. This very same shit. Just drilling 3 after 3 after 3, running around the court, relocating around the perimeter, and confusing defenders as to where the fuck he is on the court at any time. It's fun. And fits the style of this team and what they need more than even what average Rudy Gay can provide. Now, it's a tough conversation with a guy like Rudy Gay to say you can't play anymore. Like Quinn Snyder on a playoff team can say, I don't know you. You're a free agent. Sit down on the bench. And that's an easier conversation that can be had sometimes versus Will Hardy has this connection from San Antonio with Rudy Gay, and that needs to be more of like a colleague-to-colleague situation. Rudy Gay is older than Will Hardy, where Hardy needs to tell him, like, look, we need to move this ball club in a new direction, and I'm going to give you minutes against certain teams. We're obviously going to have injuries from time to time. You're going to play basketball from time to time. But right now this team needs to grow, and that pretty clearly is going to be with Simone Fontecchio. I have no clue how you walk away from today thinking Rudy Gay deserves those minutes. Certainly if you're not trying to win, which ostensibly that's what we're trying to do. So I know it's a tough conversation to have sometimes, but I think it needs to be had. Just checking the Twitter mentions for a little bit. One guy says Fontecchio sucks. Well, maybe right now the minus 19 doesn't look too good. But I'm not saying Fontecchio is going to be an all-star, but hey, Better than Rudy Gay so far. So Rudy Gay's burner account says that Fontecchio sucks, I guess. From New York's perspective, I thought Jericho Sims did a great job pressuring the rim. 5 fouls from him. He came in great for Hartenstein, who picked up 3 fouls very early. If we're going to complain about Olynyk's whistle, I thought Hartenstein got a tough whistle today. But Jericho Sims played a pretty nice game, I thought. Putting pressure on a Utah defense that just couldn't keep up with that level. Talen Horton-Tucker, I got to write about him this week. I'm going to compare some clips to how he played his not his rookie year in LA when they won the title, but his second year in LA that got him that lucrative contract extension, to his second year in LA when he was a total fucking disaster, to this year and what is he doing differently. And today, I was, again, impressed with what we were getting out of Talen Horton-Tucker. He's 6 of 6 from the free throw line. He's pressuring the rim. He missed 2 threes. One of them was, apparently, he's allowed to take 1 step-back 3 a game, and he missed his attempt today. His turnovers weren't terrible. He had 3 turnovers, but they weren't the, slap your head and slam it against the wall type turnovers. They were running the offense, trying to find a play, and sometimes you make a bad read and throw it to a bad player. There was a good tip by the defense. I had no problem with how Talen Horton-Tucker played today. I thought his defense was kind of whatever, and there wasn't anything, no great blocks or rebounds to really, which is what you kind of want out of him. Good on-ball defense, nothing really that really helped. I think I would have loved to see more Horton-Tucker on a guy like Isaiah Quickly or Jalen Brunson. I always just prefer it when you got these little guys that are just completely torching your regular backcourt. Put size, put burliness on them. And if the worst thing that could happen in that situation is you end up having these larger guys commit a couple fouls, right? And then all of a sudden you're in the bonus against the other team, and it can be a little bit of an issue. It does have its downfalls, but when guys like that are just going to torch the offense, I just really would have appreciated having a Talen Horton-Tucker kind of matching up against Emmanuel Quickly, who was a plus 18 today. I found Horton-Tucker to be completely adequate today. Watching some clips over these past 3 years, I think it's pretty clear that he's just wildly more under control over the past 2 weeks and even the first 2 weeks of this season. Moving the ball efficiently, where he doesn't get the ball and then stop. He gets the ball and he is immediately shooting or passing or driving, right? And because he's not the fastest guy in the world, he doesn't have a great first step. He's got to be moving. And so I've appreciated his play over the past couple weeks. So I think I might try to write about that and just show up some clips of here's good THT, and this is what we want to see. And if giving him license to shoot 1 step back 3 a game is what draws this out of him, then I guess I will take that. We've been on the air for a little bit. If anyone wants to chime in and ask a question or make a comment, I'll stick around for a little bit. I'm going to take a couple sips of beer here and let the lines open if you want to chime in. Otherwise, we'll get going on Friday. Yeah, I'm just, when we were talking about potential Rudy Gobert trades and Donovan Mitchell trades and the kind of guys we could get back, there are 2 players that are highly touted by their respective teams and fan bases that I just want no part of. I don't like their NBA future. I don't like where they're going. It's DeAndre Hunter in Atlanta and RJ Barrett in New York. I think they're fine starters. I see 0 all-star potential out of either of those guys. I think they're going to have nice 15-year careers as like Rudy Gay types, right? Who they might have an 18-point season or something like that and be okay. But I just see no verve or top level, I'm going to kick your ass level of play from those guys outside of 4 or 5 games a year. And that's not it. That's just not it. I think one guy I've been underrated about talking about today, and I think I'll close with this unless anybody else wants to chime in, is watching these past 3 games. I do not see any sort of ceiling for Lauri Markkanen outside of maybe a top 35-ish, top 40-ish player. If we want to put it in sports radio, talk show language, he's just not an alpha dog type player. He's good enough to be a starter and obviously good enough to maybe be a primary option on a bunch of sets, and maybe he'll Carlos Boozer his way into a 20-10 season, make a fringe all-star game. He might make it, depending on injuries, he could squeeze in there for the Salt Lake City All-Star game this year. But he had a fewer minutes because of some foul trouble early, but he picks up his third foul. Again, you look at Lauri Markkanen's fouls, a couple of them were silly, but they were all fouls, right? So he picks up 3 fouls in the first half. They're all real fouls. And to his credit, Lauri Markkanen is a fantastically low foul player. I don't really have a problem with him like we do Olynyk. But he still played 30 minutes today and just had 13 points to show for it. Now, Olynyk was going off, and Olynyk probably shouldn't have commandeered the offense as much as he did, especially late, when he attempted a 32.3 point attempt that was just unnecessary. But there was a lot of NPC play from Markkanen today, and he for so long he's been a guy to get along, especially at his time at going back to Arizona even when he was in college. And I respect all the fawning pieces that are coming out about Hardy. Seeing what he did for Team Finland and how he can be an alpha dog and doing all these and how he can do all these sorts of different things. You just don't. Utah rarely just gives him the ball and says, "You run the action." I'm dying for a 4-5 pick and roll between Markkanen and Kessler or Markkanen and Olynyk, right? Or an inverse pick and roll where Markkanen's the ball handler and Conley, Clarkson, Sexton, Beasley, those guys are the ones setting the screen, right? Or how about a Markkanen THT pick and roll, right? And Markkanen's making the decisions, and you get THT rumbling downhill, and you can do a give and go with THT, who's got some good passing vision. There's a lot of, if you can say that Markkanen can do these sorts of different things and be that all-star level player, the ball needs to find him, and he needs to make A-level plays, and not just be a dependent threat the entire game, right? He'll have 1 or 2 plays a game where you're like, hey, look at him put the ball on the floor. Look at him make a great read. Look at the shake he put on a guy like Jericho Sims, right? You'll get a couple games where Markkanen is completely got the defenders figured out, and he's drawing foul after foul after foul. And I thought today would have been a great chance to do that against a Jericho Sims, right, who's a very inexperienced front court player. Or a Julius Randle, who's very foul prone. Or Obi Toppin, who still hasn't figured out NBA defense. Like, these are players that I think Markkanen can take advantage of. And instead, we just get a lot of weird offense today from players that, if they don't have it going, I just don't want them to keep going, right? So if he's going to be 4th on the team in shot attempts, it doesn't leave me very happy. So I was pretty disappointed with him today. As a general matter, of course. But he's good. He's fine. I'm happy he's a part of the future. I feel very sketchy about giving him some sort of massive contract, expecting him to be a top 25 player, right? You're never going to roll the ball out in the beginning of a season at any point in Markkanen's career and saying, you know what, I'm going to pencil him in as an all-star. You're never going to be able to do that. You're going to have to get real lucky, and he's going to have to improve some skills real fast. He's fine. He's good. I'm happy he's a Jazz man. But I think we got to cap our expectations there. That's all I got today. Been online for a little while. Thank you all for joining. I got my beer. Got to finish my beer. We got Phoenix coming up in a few days. We got a couple days off. So hopefully the days off does some good. Phoenix is playing without Chris Paul still. If I want to look at their most recent games here, they're without Chris Paul. Obviously, Cam Johnson will be out for quite a while. But Phoenix is always going to be competitive regardless of who they're rolling out, because Devin Booker is a great player, and he's playing quite well. And Dwayne Washington Jr. had 23 points the other night for Phoenix. I didn't even know he was getting minutes for Phoenix lately, but he had 21 points in 19 minutes the other day. But this is going to be a Booker and Ayton team, right? And Campaign's still there. Mikal Bridges is still there. Obviously, no Jay Crowder for them. They're playing Josh Okogie, who I like to think I'm pretty good at knowing who like the 9th, 10th, and 11th guys are on NBA teams. I thought Okogie was out of the league. I didn't realize that he was on the team. And then we got Australian Jock Landale and Damian Lee comes over from Golden State. Key bench piece for Golden State, right? We talk about Golden State's bench being so shitty. Damian Lee is one of those pieces, and he's playing quite well off the bench for Phoenix. So Phoenix comes into town, solid team even without Chris Paul and Jay Crowder and Cam Johnson. Chris Paul might come back pretty soon. I know he's been day to day. He has a heel injury. He's questionable for tomorrow versus the Warriors, so we'll see what happens after that. Obviously, you know what's going to happen if he plays, right? He's just going to eat the backcourt apart, and we got to figure out how to manage Chris Paul's offense, and we'll get there when we get there. But that'll be Friday night, I believe, if I know my dates correctly. Look at the Jazz schedule here. 11:18. That's Friday. Okay, I didn't lie. Okay, y'all have a great night. I'm gonna head out, finish this beer, and watch the rest of these games. We got San Antonio and Portland coming in late, and see what happens there. Two good teams that are fun to watch. So y'all have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.